The cargo bay reeked of ozone and scorched metal. Emergency lights cast everything in blood-red shadows, cycling through the smoke that poured from a ruptured bulkhead. Jonas Mercer pressed himself against a support beam, trying to slow his breathing enough to hear past the alarm klaxons. 3 weeks since the Meridian went dark. 3 weeks since command stopped responding to his distress signals. 3 weeks alone on a derelict station that seemed to grow more hostile with each passing hour. He wiped sweat from his eyes and checked his handheld scanner. The power fluctuation had originated from Deck 7, deep in the restricted zone. The zone he'd been explicitly ordered never to enter. The zone where something had been screaming for the past 6 hours. Not mechanical sounds. Not the groan of failing systems or the hiss of atmospheric breach. These were voices, high, desperate, unmistakably alive. Jonas moved through the corridor with practiced silence, his tool bag slung across his back. His engineering uniform was stained with 3 weeks of survival, patched where hull fragments had torn through the fabric. His hands shook as he bypassed the security lock on the blast door. The door slid open with a pneumatic wheeze. The chamber beyond was vast and dark, illuminated only by flickering containment fields. And within those fields, pressed against the translucent barriers like prisoners against cell walls, were 3 figures. They turned toward him as one. Jonas froze. They were humanoid but wrong in ways that made his brain struggle to process what he was seeing. Their skin held an iridescent quality, shifting between pale violet and soft silver depending on how the light caught them. Bioluminescent patterns traced along their necks and arms like living circuitry, pulsing faintly with each breath. Their eyes were large and luminous, entirely black except for subtle gradients of color at the edges, purples and blues that seemed to shimmer with emotion. They were young. He could see it in their faces, in the way they moved. 2 of them were nearly the same height, perhaps equivalent to human teenagers. The third was smaller, maybe 8 or 9 in human years, pressed between the other 2. The tallest one stepped forward as far as the containment field would allow. She placed her hands against the barrier, and Jonas saw her palms were marked with those same glowing patterns. When she opened her mouth, the translation implant in his ear struggled for a moment before clicking into comprehension. "Please," her voice cracked. "Please, you must help us." Jonas found his voice. "Who are you? What is this place?" "We are Valesian," the second one said. She moved to stand beside the first, her posture protective. "My name is Nira, this is my sister Selah, and our youngest sister Kiva." She gestured to the small one, who watched Jonas with eyes too old for her apparent age. "We were taken, brought here against our will." "Taken by whom?" "The ones who operated this station," Selah said. "Before the systems began failing. Before they fled and left us here to die." Jonas's mind raced. The Meridian was officially a deep space research station studying anomalous energy signatures in this sector, but restricted zones, containment fields, living subjects locked away in the darkest corner of the facility. He'd been a maintenance engineer, kept deliberately ignorant of what the science teams were actually doing. "How long have you been here?" 3 cycles, Nira said. 3 cycles of tests, of pain, of watching others die in the chambers beside ours. Her voice hardened. "And then the alarms, the evacuation, the humans running, sealing every door behind them, leaving us locked in these fields with no food, no water, no way to call for help." The youngest one, Kiva, pressed herself against the barrier. "They left us here to die in the dark." Jonas felt something cold settle in his chest. 3 weeks. They'd been here for 3 weeks, trapped and starving while he'd been above, rationing his supplies and waiting for rescue that would never come. "The containment fields," he said. "I can shut them down, but I need to access the main control panel." "There." Selah pointed to a terminal on the far wall, barely visible in the darkness. Jonas crossed the chamber, his boots echoing in the vast space. The terminal screen flickered to life under his touch, displaying a security protocol he recognized. Standard military encryption. Nothing he couldn't bypass with the right tools and enough time. Behind him, he heard Kiva's small voice. "Will he help us?" "He has to," Nira said. "He's our only chance." Jonas's hands moved across the terminal, entering commands from memory. The encryption was designed to keep unauthorized personnel out, but he'd been maintaining these systems for 2 years. He knew their weaknesses. The screen flashed. "Access granted." "Stand back from the barriers," he said. The 3 sisters stepped away from the shimmering fields. Jonas entered the shutdown sequence and watched the containment barriers flicker and die. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Selah stumbled forward, catching herself on the edge of the containment platform. Her legs nearly buckled. Nira grabbed her sister's arm, supporting her weight. Jonas moved quickly, pulling emergency ration packs from his bag. Here, slowly. Your systems have been under stress. Kiva took the water container he offered with trembling hands. She drank in small sips, her luminescent patterns brightening slightly with each swallow. "Why are you still here?" Nira asked. She accepted a ration pack but watched Jonas with wary eyes. "If the others fled, why did you remain?" "I didn't get the evacuation order," Jonas said. "By the time I realized what was happening, they'd already locked down the station and detached the escape pods. I've been trying to survive long enough for rescue." He paused. "But I don't think rescue is coming. I think they sealed this place and marked it as lost. To hide what they did here," Selah said softly. Jonas met her luminous gaze. "Yeah." The station shuddered around them. Somewhere deep in the superstructure, metal groaned. The emergency lights flickered. "The station's dying," Jonas said. "Main power is failing. Life support is running on backup generators that won't last more than a few days." He looked at the three sisters. "And now that you're free, we need to find a way off this station before it tears itself apart." Kiva moved closer to her older sisters, fear clear in her expression. "How?" "There's a maintenance shuttle in Bay 12, Jonas said. "It's small, barely rated for short-range transport, but it has an FTL beacon. If I can get it operational, we can signal for help." "Can you repair it?" Nira asked. "Maybe. The bay has independent power and I've been cannibalizing parts from other systems." Jonas shouldered his bag. "But we need to move fast. Whatever caused the evacuation is still active somewhere in this station, and I don't want to be here when it reaches critical mass." Selah straightened, steadying herself against Nira's supporting arm. "Then we go now. We've survived 3 weeks in those fields. We will not die here in the darkness." Jonas led them through the blast door and into the corridor. The sisters moved slowly at first, their bodies weakened by captivity, but determination drove them forward. He watched as they helped each other, Nira and Selah flanking Kiva, their glowing patterns pulsing in synchronization. The journey through the station was a nightmare of flickering lights and failed systems. Bulkheads that should have been sealed stood open, exposing damaged compartments to the void. Sections of corridor were ankle-deep in leaked coolant. The air grew thinner as they climbed toward the outer ring where the maintenance bays were located. Jonas paused at an intersection, checking his scanner. "Power fluctuations ahead. We'll need to reroute through the secondary passage." "Wait." Kiva tugged on Nira's arm, her eyes wide. "Something's wrong." Jonas felt it too, a change in the air pressure, a subtle vibration through the deck plates. Then the lights went out completely. Emergency systems kicked in after 3 seconds of absolute darkness, bathing everything in dim red. Jonas's scanner showed a massive power drain originating from the station's core. "Move," he said. "Now." They ran. Behind them, the sound of tearing metal echoed through the corridors. Jonas risked a glance back and saw bulkheads collapsing, sections of the station folding in on themselves as the structural integrity failed. The maintenance bay entrance appeared ahead. Jonas slammed his hand against the manual override, and the door ground open with agonizing slowness. "Inside, go." The sisters scrambled through the opening. Jonas followed, hitting the door control as soon as he was clear. The door sealed just as the corridor behind them buckled and compressed. They stood in the maintenance bay, breathing hard. The space was smaller than the cargo areas, cluttered with equipment and spare parts. And there, secured in its launch cradle, sat the shuttle. It looked like hell. Scorch marks ran along one side where an electrical fire had damaged the hull plating. The starboard thruster housing was cracked. The cockpit canopy had a spiderweb of fractures across its surface. "That's our escape?" Selah asked quietly. "That's our chance," Jonas corrected. He moved to the shuttle's access panel and began running diagnostics. The results made his stomach sink. The main drive is functional, barely. Life support is intact. But the FTL beacon, he pulled the damaged component from its housing. "It's fried. I need to fabricate a replacement." "How long?" Nira asked. 4 hours. Maybe 5 if I have to machine custom parts." The station shuddered again. Somewhere in the distance, something exploded. "We may not have 5 hours," Selah said. Jonas looked at the 3 sisters, exhausted, starving, freed from captivity only to face death in a different form. They were watching him with those luminous eyes, waiting for him to tell them what to do. He thought about the evacuation, about his colleagues who had fled without sending him a message, without checking if anyone remained, about the locked doors and sealed chambers and prisoners left to die. "Then I work fast," he said. He set up a makeshift workspace using equipment from around the bay. The fabrication unit was functional, and he had enough raw materials to create what he needed. But the process required precision, and precision required time. The sisters made themselves useful. Kiva organized tools, handing Jonas exactly what he needed, before he asked for it. Nira and Selah worked together to reinforce the shuttle's damaged sections with salvaged plating, their luminescent patterns brightening as they focused on the task. 2 hours passed. The beacon's core components were taking shape, layer by microscopic layer in the fabricator. Jonas, Nira's voice held a note of concern. The bay doors, they're not responding to controls. He looked up from his work. The massive outer doors that would allow the shuttle to launch showed red failure lights across their status panel. Hydraulic failure, he said, checking the diagnostics. The launch sequence requires those doors to open. If they're locked shut, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Selah studied the door mechanism. Can it be opened manually? There's an emergency release, but someone would have to activate it from outside the bay. In the corridor, Jonas met her eyes, which is currently open to vacuum. Then we seal ourselves in suits and open it manually, Nira said. Jonas shook his head. The environmental suits in this bay are rated for humans. They won't fit you, and I can't modify them in time. Kiva looked up from the tools she'd been organizing. What if we don't need suits? You can't survive vacuum exposure, Jonas said gently. No, Kiva said. But we can survive without breathing, for a short time. She glanced at her sisters. It's how we endured the tests. When they emptied the atmosphere from our chambers, we can seal ourselves. Our people evolved on a world with thin atmosphere. We can last maybe 3 minutes without air. Jonas stared at her. That's not long enough. The manual release requires 4 minutes to reach the mechanism, activate it, and return, Selah finished. She'd been studying the maintenance diagrams on a wall panel. But if 2 of us work together, we can cut that time. No. The word came out harder than Jonas intended. I just freed you from those fields. I'm not sending you into vacuum to save my life. Nira stepped closer to him. You saved us when you could have walked away, when you could have preserved your own resources and increased your chances of survival alone. Her luminescent patterns pulsed softly. We do not abandon those who show us kindness. It is not our way. This is our choice, Selah added. Our decision, not yours. Jonas wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in their faces. They'd survived 3 weeks of captivity, of experiments, of being left to die. They weren't going to wait passively while their chance at freedom slipped away. 3 minutes, he said finally. Not a second more. If you can't get back in that time, we will, Nira said. They prepared quickly. Jonas sealed the interior bay door and flooded the corridor access with nitrogen to minimize the shock of decompression. Nira and Selah stood by the airlock, their luminescent patterns glowing brighter, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost meditative. Kiva pressed close to Jonas, her small frame tense with worry. Opening airlock in 3, Jonas said. 2, 1. The corridor beyond decompressed with a rushing roar. Nira and Selah moved through the airlock, their movements suddenly fluid and purposeful despite their weakened state. Jonas watched through the observation port, counting seconds in his head. The sisters ran through the corridor, their bodies adapting to the vacuum in ways he didn't understand. Their luminescent patterns blazed brilliantly, so bright he could track their progress even through the settling debris. They reached the manual release mechanism. Working together, they pulled the emergency levers. The bay doors began their grinding, painfully slow opening sequence. 2 minutes 30 seconds. Come back, Kiva whispered. Please come back. The sisters turned, running back toward the airlock. They were slower now, their movements less coordinated. Jonas saw Selah stumble, saw Nira grab her arm and pull her forward. 2 minutes 50 seconds. They were 10 meters from the airlock. 3 minutes. Nira shoved Selah through the airlock opening and collapsed behind her. Jonas slammed the emergency seal and flooded the chamber with atmosphere. The sisters lay on the deck, their bodies convulsing as they gasped for air. Their luminescent patterns flickered erratically, dimming and brightening like faulty lights. Jonas pulled them fully inside, checking vital signs as best he could. Both were breathing, ragged and harsh, but breathing. Slowly, their patterns stabilized. Kiva knelt beside them, tears tracking down her face. We're okay, Nira managed, her voice raw. We made it. The bay doors finished their opening sequence with a final grinding clank. Through the opening, Jonas could see the stars. Let's not do that again, Selah whispered. Jonas returned to his work with renewed urgency. The beacon was nearly complete, its components cooling in the fabricator's chamber. He assembled it with steady hands despite the adrenaline still coursing through his system. 30 minutes later, He installed the beacon in the shuttle's communications array. "That's it," he said. "We're ready." The sisters had recovered enough to stand, though they moved gingerly as they boarded the shuttle. Jonas secured them in the passenger seats, checking their harnesses twice. He slid into the pilot's seat and began the launch sequence. The shuttle's systems came online with a series of beeps and chirps. Everything showed green except for warnings he'd learned to ignore. "Everyone hold on," he said. The shuttle lifted from its cradle with a shudder that ran through the entire frame. Jonas guided it carefully toward the open bay doors, compensating for the damaged thruster with manual adjustments. They slipped through the opening with meters to spare. Behind them, the Meridian station continued its death throes. Section by section, it folded in on itself, a monument to secrets that would now die with it. Jonas activated the FTL beacon and transmitted their distress signal into the void. "How long?" Kiva asked. "In this sector, maybe 6 hours for a response, maybe 12. Jonas checked their life support readings. "We have enough air and power for 3 days. We'll be fine." Nira leaned back in her seat, closing her luminous eyes. "Fine. Such a strange word for what we are." "Alive," Selah corrected softly. "We are alive." They drifted in silence for a while, the shuttle maintaining a safe distance from the dying station. Jonas monitored the beacon, watching its signal pulse out into the darkness. "What happens now?" Kiva asked. "After someone answers the beacon?" "There will be questions," Jonas said. "Investigations. They'll want to know what happened on that station." "Will they believe us?" Nira asked. Jonas thought about what he'd seen in that containment chamber, about the security protocols and the sealed records and the systematic way the station had been abandoned. "They'll have to," he said. "You're living proof of what was being done there." Selah's luminescent patterns pulsed with an emotion Jonas couldn't read. "And then what? What becomes of us?" "That depends on where you want to go. Do you have a homeworld? Family?" The three sisters exchanged glances. "Our world is far from here," Nira said. "Very far. And we were taken so young." She reached out and took her sister's hands. "What family we have is here, in this shuttle. Then we find somewhere safe," Jonas said. "Somewhere no one can lock you away ever again." Kiva's luminescent patterns brightened slightly. "You would help us find such a place?" Jonas looked at the three of them, survivors of cruelty he could barely comprehend, still finding the strength to hope. He thought about the choice he'd made when he first heard their voices through the station walls. The choice to investigate rather than ignore, to help rather than preserve only himself. "Yeah," he said, "I would." The hours passed slowly. They shared rations and water. The sisters told him about their homeworld, a place of thin atmosphere and towering crystal formations, where their people's bioluminescence served as a primary form of communication. They spoke of being taken while traveling with their parents, of waking in the station's chambers, of the months that followed. Jonas told them about Earth, about growing up in the orbital stations that circled his homeworld, about choosing engineering because he liked solving problems with his hands. "You are good at solving problems," Selah observed. "I try." 10 hours after launching, the shuttle's proximity alarms activated. Jonas checked the sensors and felt relief wash through him. "We've got a ship, military transponder. They're responding to our beacon." The sisters tensed, their luminescent patterns flickering with anxiety. "It's okay," Jonas said. "This part of the fleet doesn't answer to the people who ran that station. These are patrol vessels. They'll help." The patrol ship Valiant matched velocity with their shuttle and established communication. Jonas transmitted everything, the station logs he'd managed to save, his own recordings, testimony from the sisters. When the Valiant's captain came on screen, her expression was grim. "Mr. Mercer, we're bringing you aboard. Medical teams are standing by." She paused. "And I want you to know, what was done on that station, it wasn't sanctioned, it wasn't official. The people responsible will answer for their crimes. See that they do," Jonas said. The shuttle docked with the Valiant smoothly. When the airlock opened, medical personnel waited with scanning equipment and gentle hands. They examined the sisters with careful professionalism, mindful of the trauma they'd endured. A senior officer took Jonas aside while the sisters were being evaluated. "The Meridian has been designated a restricted zone," she said. "A full investigation team is en route. Your testimony will be crucial." "I'll tell them everything," Jonas said. "But those three, they've been through enough. They deserve peace, not months of interrogations." The officer's expression softened. "We'll do what we can to make this as quick as possible, but they're victims of a serious crime. Their testimony matters. Then treat them like victims, not evidence. She nodded. You have my word. 3 weeks of questioning followed, but the valiant kept its promise. The sisters were treated with dignity and care. Medical teams helped them recover from their captivity. Counselors worked with them through the trauma. Jonas stayed with them through all of it. He'd become their advocate, their translator when the others didn't understand Valesian culture, their friend when the weight of testimony became too heavy. One evening, as they sat in the Valiant's observation deck watching stars streak past at FTL speeds, Nira spoke quietly. We've been discussing our future, where we go when this is finished. Jonas waited. We cannot return to our homeworld, Selah continued. Too much time has passed, too much has changed within us. We would not fit there anymore. Kiva leaned against Jonas's side, a gesture that had become comfortable over the weeks. But we don't want to be alone. We need, what is the human word, a guardian? Jonas felt something catch in his chest. We want to stay with you, Nira said simply. If you will have us, you saved our lives. You gave us freedom when you could have walked away. You stood beside us when we needed someone to believe us. Her luminescent patterns pulsed with an emotion he'd learned to recognize as hope. We want to be family, if such a thing is possible between our species. Jonas looked at the three of them, Nira with her careful strength, Selah with her fierce determination, Kiva with her surprising wisdom. They'd survived horrors together. They'd made it through the station's death and the aftermath. And somewhere in those weeks, they'd become more than survivors sharing a shuttle. They'd become something worth fighting for. Yes, he said. Yes, that's possible. Kiva's face brightened with joy. Selah smiled, a human expression she'd learned from watching Jonas. Nira simply reached out and took his hand, her luminescent patterns glowing warm and steady. 6 months later, Jonas signed the final documents establishing legal guardianship. The trial of those responsible for the Meridian's illegal operations had concluded with convictions. The station itself had been destroyed, its secrets scattered across space. Jonas and the sisters settled on New Terra, a colony world with a mixed population where 3 Valesian siblings and their human guardian wouldn't draw too much attention. He found work with a civilian engineering firm. The sisters enrolled in school, learning and growing and slowly healing from what they'd endured. They built a home together, small at first, but growing as they learned what family meant. Some evenings, they'd sit on their porch and watch the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded them all of how far they'd come. Nira would talk about her studies in xenobiology. Selah would share stories from her art classes. Kiva would curl up between them all and describe the garden she wanted to plant. And Jonas would listen, marveling at how a single choice to investigate voices in the darkness rather than ignore them had transformed his life so completely. Do you ever regret it? Selah asked one such evening. Taking responsibility for us? Your life would be simpler without 3 alien sisters. Jonas looked at the 3 of them, their luminescent patterns glowing softly in the fading light. He thought about the cargo bay reeking of ozone, the desperate voices through containment fields, the choice he'd made to open that blast door. Not for a second, he said. Kiva snuggled closer. Good, because you're stuck with us now. Yeah, Jonas said, smiling. I guess I am. Above them, stars emerged in the darkening sky. The same stars that shone over distant worlds, over abandoned stations, over all the places they'd been and all the places they'd yet to go. But for now, they were home, and they were together, and that was enough. If you have enjoyed the story, tell YouTube to send you more stories like this by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.